Keeping Up with the Kardashians is my guilty pleasure. I've been watching the series since 2013, so I've followed the rise of Kylie and Kylie Cosmetics, 2 weddings, a divorce, a coming out, and many, many babies. I've had points where I loved them, points where I've unfollowed them, but generally I just find them really fascinating. And one of the things that I think is most interesting is how they've maintained relevancy. Kim and Kourtney are over 40, but Gen Z is still buying Skims. How have they kept people on side for this long? What is their secret? First of all, let's do a brief history of the Kardashians. In the summer of 1978, Kris Humphries married lawyer Robert Kardashian. The Kardashians divorced in 1991, and later that year, Kris remarried Caitlyn Jenner, a former Olympian. Caitlyn and Kris had 2 kids, Kendall and Kylie. And sadly, in 2003, Robert Kardashian passed away from esophageal cancer. Kris has said that she pitched the idea of keeping up with the Kardashians to Ryan Seacrest in 2007 because the family needed the money. She said there was never a dull moment in the family, so it would make great entertainment. And the family weren't very well known when the show aired. And I think it's important to note here that the show was in development before Kim's sex tape came out in 2007. They wrapped the final season of Keeping Up with the Kardashians in 2021 and then started a new show called The Kardashians on Hulu in 2022. They follow roughly the same format. The show drove the Kardashians to another stratosphere of fame. In 2014, Caitlyn and Kris separated, and in 2015, Caitlyn came out as a trans woman. The show has followed the Kardashians through marriages, births, divorces, breakups, fights, coming outs. It's really covered everything. And something interesting has happened. As the show's grown in popularity, the Kardashians have gone from having a reality TV show that documents their life to their life becoming reality TV, starting with the role of the matriarch, Kris Jenner. As you might have realised, Kris is the architect of the Kardashians. She pitched the show and she started managing the kids. I think this is genius as it keeps the control and the money within the family. Typically agents take 5 to 25%, like agent fees or management fees kind of look like that. But Kris only takes 10%, or so she says. So she's held onto the cut, keeps it in the family, but also makes it really beneficial for her kids and remains the port of call for everything Kardashians. Every time we renewed for another season, she said in her autobiography, I would think, how can we take this 15 minutes of fame and turn it into 30? Apparently, Kris even felt that the show was kind of running dry by season 3. But when her kids started having kids, the ratings went up and she realised what was most important to the viewers. Because instantly the show became more relatable. It's about marriages, divorces, and kids. I started to look at our careers like pieces on a chessboard, Kris wrote in her memoir. Every day I'd wake up, I'd walk into my office and go, what moves do you need to make today? It was very calculated. My business decisions were intentional, definite, and planned to the nth degree. And she's also been quoted saying that her initial motivation to start the show was to drive sales to the Dash store, which I think was Kourtney and Kim's store in LA. She knew that the show would be good publicity for her brands, and under her watch, sure enough, there have been many more brands opened under the Kardashian umbrella. I think we can chalk a part of the Kardashians' longevity up to the fact that Kris is steering the ship. Her vision for the family as a personal brand gives her like a good bird's eye view of the bigger picture, which enables her to help them and guide them through riding the waves of their fame. She's a shrewd businesswoman. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a like and subscribe if you're new around here. I make video essays and I do lovely little vlogs of my life in London. Speaking of personal brands, let's talk about the Kardashian Simulacrum and how the conception of themselves as products has increased their longevity. We're going deep. Simulacrum is a term I recently heard on Polyester's Kardashians podcast. It means an image or a representation of something in the real world. For example, a caricature or a model village. It's a hyper-real version of something that's evolved from its original form. I'd actually encourage you to listen to their episode on this. I'll leave it linked below. The theorist John Baudrillard argued that in postmodern culture, we are growing further and further away from reality because we're constantly looking at it through these representations. And driven by consumerism, we find it almost impossible to distinguish the real from the artifice. He argued that how we perceive the world is incredibly influenced by the media that we consume. For example, our understanding of roads might be actually more our understanding of maps than the roads themselves. He would have loved the Kardashians. In this context, Keeping Up with the Kardashians and their new show, The Kardashians, are Simulacra. We understand the Kardashian family through the lens of the show, which has been curated and edited to show some part of their perceived reality. Reality and the representation of reality are blurred. It may appear to be real, but really, it's a model village. The show is the bedrock of the Kardashians' public universe, with their brands and their social media revolving around it. Kim even says this on the new season. The Kardashians shows a simulacra because they're representative of what goes on in the stars' lives. However, they're relatively far removed. They're curated, polished, staged, a molded, constructed version of reality. There are storylines, brand integrations, and even conversation with the viewer. The current version of the show is a meta-narrative where they respond to criticism about themselves, read about themselves in the tabloids, and break the fourth wall. The show and the role the show plays in their lives is acknowledged and discussed with the audience. It just takes it to full Simulacra. With the show as the anchor, the Kardashians are able to pursue other interests and take the viewer along with them for the journey. Or should I say, part of the journey. The show is the consistent bedrock of the Kardashians brand. New brands can be shown, explained, highlighted, spotlighted, bringing the audiences to the top of the sales funnel and making them more receptive to new things. And this is because the show feels familiar and safe to the audience. And it's reassuring for them to see struggles portrayed on the show that so many of them themselves have faced. They keep coming back for those moments. Stories around emotions and relationships sit at the crux of human existence and make the family feel more relatable, even as their empire grows and they hoard more and more wealth. The emotive storylines keep the Kardashians feeling close to the viewer, even though sometimes they're interwoven with branded content, like for example, Kourtney and Travis's recent wedding, which was sponsored by Dolce & Gabbana. That is a whole other video essay topic. The number of sisters also means that they can cycle out the girls. When one needs a break, another can step into the limelight and take on more airtime in the show. This model enables them to have seasons in the limelight. For example, the older girls stepped up and took on more of the work when Kylie wanted to retreat and start her family. And in the recent seasons, you can see this happen with Kourtney, Kim, and Kylie, who have really stepped up to take on more of the responsibilities, I think to assist Khloe, who is currently going through a difficult time with her ex. You may have heard of him. Tristan Thompson. There's been a lot of unwanted press attention around his cheating scandals, especially as they've just had another baby. Kris has made sure that the show is the anchor to the Kardashian brand because it provides consistency and relatability and a soapbox for whatever the Kardashian brand wants to share with the world. Not to mention a massive commercial for all the products they work on and all the brands that they work with. The consistency of the show allows everything else around it to change and gives them a platform to explain it all to the viewer. What do you mean when you say allow everything else to change? There is a widely acknowledged phenomenon that women have to reinvent themselves to maintain relevancy. The Kardashians lean into this, and they do it very well. Taylor Swift is the classic example used when talking about public reinvention. This started in 2012 when she moved from an innocent country singer to a cool girl wearing a bold red lip for her Red album. And every album since, she's matched her look to fit the theme of the album, ensuring she earns more eyeballs and controls the public narrative around herself and her music. The Kardashians also follow this playbook of reinvention, often centering around life events such as relationships, breakups, and having kids. Each moment feels like a new chapter in their lives. Some clear examples would be Kourtney's aesthetic change when she started dating Travis Barker, Kim's neutral, sleek rebrand during her marriage to Kanye, and then her divorce, training as a lawyer, putting emphasis on her credentials and having significant aesthetic changes. I think we'll talk about those in a bit. And to make it current, Kylie's quiet luxury pivot. This to me is another example of how they see their lives as extensions of their businesses. They are also a product that people buy into. They need to keep things interesting for their core audience and appeal to new audiences. And a sister reading of this, no pun intended, would be that the Kardashians understand the need to adapt to changing times. For example, they were early adopters of Instagram and they grew huge followings, and it ended up becoming integral to their relevancy. They also benefit and reinforce their visual ambiguity. They kind of look white, they kind of look Latinx or Latina. I'm sorry if I've used the wrong terminology there, I have given it a Google, but I'm unsure. And 3 of the sisters are half Armenian, and many of their kids are mixed race with black fathers. The plastic surgery makes them look like people who have had surgery. As The Weeknd says, LA girls all look the same. And this ambiguity gives them a degree of mass appeal. They're an all-American family that can adapt their aesthetic over time to appeal to different audiences. And as a collective, they portray a modern family, multiracial, matriarchal, and conquering the American dream. Adds to their ongoing appeal and helps them adapt their public image as times change. I think this was most clear in Kim's transition from the BBL look and the racial connotations it carried to this new all-American, much whiter, thinner look. Weirdly, this visual illusion gives her a wider appeal across different audiences and demographics. And it keeps people interested, whether they love it or hate it. Ultimately, there is no stagnation in the Kardashian visual brand. There's a constant evolution of image and thus of themselves as products, which in tandem with familiar, relatable storylines in the show, keeps the public engaged. All press is good press, especially when it's your press. I think that people who call the Kardashians influencers don't actually acknowledge the multiple arms of influence that they have. A large part of the Kardashians' success comes from not only the way that they utilize social media, but also the show and the press to control the narrative. I see this as them having three key arms of influence, and they utilize all three to carve the narrative. An example of this three-arm method at work is their methodical press releases before every new series launches. For example, Kourtney released a statement confirming a pregnancy just 4 days before the 4th season aired, which then opened to an audience of 2.8 million. And the episode where Kourtney gave birth got 2.6 million viewers. Another great example would be Kim's marriage to Chris Humphries and its gradual decline. Not even gradual. A statement confirming the divorce was given to E! Network, which owns the show Keeping Up with the Kardashians, on Halloween 2011, just a month before the new series of Kourtney and Kim Takes New York was going to air. They got a lot of backlash when they announced the divorce, as it had only been 72 days since they got married. People saw it as a cash grab, because they also did a wedding special on E! Earlier that very month. So then Kourt and Kim Take New York aired, and it showed a lot of footage of Chris not being a very supportive partner to Kim, the stress it was putting Kim under, and generally being a terrible partner. It premiered to an audience of 3.19 million viewers and closed out to 4.47 million. And that was the episode where Kim breaks things off with Chris. And after following the show, the viewers had a new sympathy for Kim, and the ratings were incredibly high. And the show, of course, revolved around the launch of their new Dash store in New York, which I'm sure had a very successful year following the release. These kind of rollouts are now supplemented with social media posts that push the products and the shows even more. And there's enough of them that there's always a story to capitalize on. And when things come out about them that are less than flattering, they use the arms of control that they have to try and steer the narrative in the direction they want it to go. They're also not shy of a level of controversy to keep them in people's mouths, in people's heads, in people's screens. I'd say an example of this was Kim's paper cover called Break the Internet in 2014, in which the visual reference for the cover used was by Jean-Paul Gaude, who has a history of fetishizing black women. He even released a book in 1982 called Jungle Fever. I mean, and this shoot would never fly now. Like, look at the backlash Kim got when she tried to name her brand kimono. But at the time, the paper shoot was just controversial enough to keep everyone talking about Kim. It was provocative, it was striking, it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and it did the job of generating a lot of additional headlines. And then some controversies can be turned into business opportunities. For example, Kylie and all the speculation around her lips when she was a teenager. Chris saw that, and they decided to make Kylie Cosmetics, where she released products for overlining your lips. The beginnings of a multi-million-dollar beauty company. And then when something goes unsavably wrong for one sister, another will tend to step in and kind of steal the headlines with another controversy. They'll do something surprising or outrageous. For example, when the Astroworld tragedy happened in November 2021, Kylie was still very heavily aligned with Travis. They had 2 kids together, and Kylie and Kendall were seen at Astroworld. They were both criticized heavily for posting photos of the event. Less than 2 weeks later, a source close to Kim told E! That she was dating Pete Davidson. Why would Kim want unwanted attention drawn to her relationship at that very early stage? But it works to move the focus away from Astroworld and unalign the Kardashian brand with the tragedy. It got everyone talking about a new relationship. Lovely, right? The Kardashians exist in a controversy ecosystem, highlighting and subtracting the limelight where necessary. I think what they do differently is, instead of shunning the attention, the Kardashians work within the framework, and they use it to help them stay on the top of people's minds and feeds, while expertly managing crises within the model instead of releasing poorly formed public statements or admitting wrongdoing. And because there's so many controversies, they're just able to ride the wave. Nothing ever really sticks. So those are the 4 major methods that I think the Kardashians use to stay relevant. And to stay relevant long term. There's always a lot of discourse around the Kardashians falling off or becoming irrelevant, but until one of these 4 changes, I honestly don't see that happening, or at least not anytime soon. If the show ends, or if God forbid Kris were to pass, then I think that's when we might see some changes to the Kardashians mega brand. Maybe the wheels would start to come off a bit. I'm curious to see how they deal with those eventualities, but they seem a while off yet. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you're interested in more social and cultural theory around the Kardashians, a resource that really helped me out with this video is MJ Corey's work. She's on TikTok and I think Instagram as well, and runs Kardashians Kolloquium. She's done loads of stuff on media theory and social theory, and she's writing a book. So I will direct you there if you want more Kardashians analysis. She's also started Kardashian Data Coalition, which is a really cool project. As always, I will leave all the resources I used to write this video down below. So if you're looking to read a bit more, you can go and find it there. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in my next video.